Being able to travel with FPV is one of the most amazing parts of being an FPV pilot. And for a lot of people, it's a long-term goal to go on a big trip and fly all these amazing places. But there's a lot of risk involved if you want to make a drone last. So these are my top tips to not lose or crash a drone whilst going on a big trip. The first tip should go without saying, and that's to make sure you got a GPS installed and configured correctly on your drone, because this could save you in so many situations. Imagine you want to get this epic shot up a mountain, and you're flying really far away at the top of the mountain, but you start losing signal in your goggles. Being able to flick a switch on your controller and have it return to you and land with pretty pinpoint accuracy is going to be a lifesaver. Whether it's a 5-inch, 7-inch, 3-inch drone, or even smaller, I recommend getting yourself a GPS and getting it configured. There's loads of tutorials online that'll tell you how to do it, and I recommend doing it somewhere safe and testing it before you have to use it. The next tip is about positioning. I'm talking about where you position yourself when you fly your FPV drone. You got to remember that the signal between the goggles and the drone and the transmitter and the drone likes to work directly. Now it's going to bounce off things, but you'll have the strongest signal if you've got a direct line of path between you and the drone and there's nothing in between it. So let me give you 3 examples. First one's going to be a mountain. Imagine you want to fly up this amazing mountain and then dive back down. The best place you can be is at the bottom, because if you're at the top and it drops off at the top and there's a bit of crest of the mountain, you're not going to have a direct line of sight when the drone is at the bottom of the mountain. But if you're at the bottom, you're always generally going to have a good signal going up. Now, if you want to fly behind a little part of the mountain, like a big rocky structure, it's going to break up the signal. If it's a small peak, it might be fine. But you've got to think about where you can position yourself to be able to dive down the right parts of it whilst having a good line of sight the entire time. The next one is a waterfall. Now, similar to a mountain, best place you're generally going to be is at the bottom of the mountain, or somewhere where you're in like a canopy where you can see every part of the waterfall and have a good drop over from it. So either further back high up or further back at the bottom. Now, if you're at the bottom, you want to go over the top of the waterfall, then come down it. You've got to think, is there going to be a good signal going to it? Or is something blocking me and the signal? The third example is if you're going to fly under a bridge or under like a cave and come out the other side. Now you've got to think, where's the signal going to be best at that I can stand and have good signal the whole time? You're not going to get perfect signal the whole time because it's not going to be direct line of sight if you're going to go around the bridge. But some people stand on the bridge, and if it's a small bridge, you might have good signal. I personally think it's better to stand further back and have good signal going directly the whole way you're under the bridge. And then when you're on you've only got a small portion when you've got weaker signal, and then when you're above the bridge, you've got good signal again. Same goes for if it's a small cave or a small opening in, like, let's say, somewhere by the water. You need to kind of think about how big it is as well, how long the signal is going to be broken up for. Personally, I think it's great to stand in line with whatever you're flying under, and then have good signal from further away going directly, and then you can pull up and go over. The next tip isn't really related to the drones themselves, but it's related to the gear that you keep your drones in. Now, I recommend getting a good backpack that you can keep on you almost at all times. If you're traveling around Asia, then you might feel more vulnerable that, most people love drones, but there's always that risk that someone's going to come steal your stuff. So being able to keep your drone on you at all times will keep you more safe. The next tip is more about how you fly and the way that you fly. Now, you might be an amazing pilot and you're watching this and you're saying, I don't need advice on how to fly my drone, and that's absolutely fair enough. But for more the beginners that are going on a big trip and they're trying to make these drones last, I recommend just pulling it back a bit and not trying to do the super risky shot. Whether it's diving a waterfall and trying to get it trying to get as close to the water as possible, it's probably not worth it. If it's trying to go for a tiny gap, then maybe it's not worth it. You can still get these amazing cinematic shots without compromising and risking losing your drone straight away. So that's my top tip for that. The next tip is to learn how to waterproof your drone. Now, we've got lots of products out there now, conformal coating, that fly-through hydrophobic spray. It's obviously a bit nerve-wracking to take apart your drone and coating it. If you don't feel confident, then obviously reach out to someone or a FPV shop and they might be able to help you. But being able to waterproof your drone and have it, that security that it's going to be safe in weather conditions or accidentally go in the water, because salt water will short your drone immediately. So I can't recommend enough learning how to waterproof it or get it waterproofed so that it's safe. Now, the next tip closely related to that is to have a flotation system. So, for example, my Chimera, something like a foamy for swimming is really good. Because if you're going to go in the water, this thing is just going to sink. So if you've got some sort of flotation system, lots of people use bottles. This foam stuff, I usually have one here and then another one. So that if it did go in the water, then at least it's going to float to the top and you can retrieve it. Because if you're trying around Asia and it goes in the sea, unless you're nearby, near the edge, you're realistically not going to get it. So that's another top tip. My next tip is around your goggles and making sure that your signal links are on your OSD. So if you're flying DJI for the goggles, you've obviously got the bars in the bottom right and your megabits a second of your bit rate. So making sure that you've got a habit of looking at those whilst you're flying. Realistically, your goggles will go before your controller goes, but it's a good habit to also have your transmitter link on there as well, RSI and LQ, and making a habit out of looking those whilst you're flying is just a really great, habit to have, so that you could monitor them and make sure that you're not going in a risky situation. My next tip is around flying FPV when there's other drone pilots. And it might seem like a silly one, but I've flown a couple of times where there's been people that are DJI minis and multiple drones up in the sky, and it can really interfere with your signal. And obviously if you're traveling to these amazing places, other people also want to get their drones up and get these amazing shots. So just being able to, plan your shots and try and avoid other drones flying can really help your signal. Because you might take off and realize that your signal is absolutely awful because there's someone up in the sky. So yeah,